All right, everyone. Things in Korea appear to be going fairly well at the moment. In the last 48 hours, we've gotten several bits of news from the Korean Peninsula. First, we hear that South Korea is considering actually sending people to North Korea instead of holding their meetings either in South Korea or in a neutral state, usually like China. Usually they go to like Beijing, or they go to the little peace area there that's sort of like it doesn't fully belong to either country. They actually have buildings that straddle the border. One side of the building has a bunch of South Korean soldiers, the other a bunch of North Korean soldiers, literally split between two countries so they can sit together at the same table and have meetings. And there have been cases where like a North Korean soldier will like take a flying leap across the room and run out the door to try to defect. It's actually happened. It's like you definitely want the most trusted guards to be the ones that are I think it's called Panmunjom, isn't it? I believe. I may be thinking of a different structure, but it's like this little peace area, and they talk about, diplomatic things, usually to no avail. But first we hear that they may actually travel to North Korea. This would be important. The concept is a lot of people would be afraid to go there because they're like, well, if I get thrown into a cell for some minor infraction, I may end up like that American kid who got brain damage. He probably got botulism or something when he was there. Or they just tortured him so badly that his mind broke. That's possible. They might get literally thrown into a rock quarry, or they might just get summarily executed for some minor infraction. To have a situation where the South Korean government is willing to maybe send diplomats directly to Pyongyang is different from the general interactions that you're used to in the Korean Peninsula. Then we hear they're not going to have any talk of nuclear de-arming or anything. But they will be talking about something that's even more interesting. Literally the concept of finally ending the Korean War. Is technically speaking, you do realize, a lot of people don't. They think that if Afghanistan is America's longest war, we're still technically at North Korea's throat and have been since the 1950s. Since the middle of the 1950s, we have been at war with North Korea. There was never an end to the war. There was never an official end to the conflict there. There was a ceasefire. That's basically, what do you think the DMZ is? Splitting up one nation into two that are still technically only semi-sovereign in that sense. Now, of course, in a pragmatic sense, they're fully independent. The North Koreans would never bow before the South Korean government. The South Koreans wouldn't accept Kim Jong-un as their dear leader. But at the same time, it is one Korea, technically speaking. If the Korean War manages to end, a process may end up being put in place where Korea reunifies. It might actually happen. Despite my overwhelming pessimism towards the situation, I still think that before these talks happen, any of a number of things could happen to escalate tensions there again. It could be the talks fall through. Somebody accidentally used the wrong, honorary title, and so they get, thrown in a gulag. And so relations, a strict letter, a sternly worded letter is launched condemning the action, breaking down relations for 5 additional years. Anything like that could happen. Unfortunately, it's a fairly high likelihood that this doesn't actually end the Korean War, but it's a start. It means that there is the possibility of the reunification of Korea, or at least the establishment of two fully functioning sovereign states that agree that to one another's full sovereignty without having a war. I think that would be great. And it could involve a North Korea that, maintains a nuclear stockpile. It is possible. By the way, if they enter the world at large, it's no longer a Chinese monoculture, essentially, for rare earth minerals, and or former buffer state that became atomic and then was too dangerous to fully cut loose. If that happens, you could see the change in leadership in North Korea, away from an absolutist system, which is basically an absolute monarchy, to something that's more constitutionalist. It is possible for that to happen. Because there are North Koreans, I think Kim Jong-un might be under pressure from his own people in part, because there are smuggling lines. We're talking shortwave broadcasts, CDs and cassettes and things like that. It's sort of what happened in Soviet Russia. Soviet Russia was destroyed in part because of the subversion of the totalitarian absolutism within the Soviet Union by the smuggling of Western music and literature and things like that. There was a certain term for books that were sometimes hand-copied within the Soviet Union. Maybe somebody goes to another country, copies down the book by hand, manages to smuggle it in, and then they sort of get circulated around. Different people read them. Poetry and academic works were most common there. They banned the laundry list of books and music that were banned in the Soviet Union. Depeche Mode, everyone's favorite band it seems lately, they were banned in the Soviet Union. But there are ways around it. So when the government's telling you that something is subversive, it becomes cool. The problem, of course, is that such materials have entered North Korea. There are DVDs of Western movies. People have pirated radio broadcasts and stuff. Now, of course, if you get caught with this, you can get killed. But it appears that there is even situationally a little bit more leniency these days as well towards that. It seems like executions and rock quarry, sendings are a little bit less common in the DPRK, maybe because they're afraid of a rebellion, to tell the truth. North Korea can't function if there's ever enough rioting domestically in North Korea, the regime falls because somebody probably takes the opportunity to invade. If not, the military probably kills off Kim Jong-un. Liberal factions that probably do exist there might very well ask for reunification the next day. It would be possible for that to happen. However, again, despite the fact that this injects a little bit of optimism into this situation, we shouldn't assume, well, North and South Korea are going to hold, for the first time in like 20 years, they're holding serious bilateral talks. This is so great. There will be Korean reunification, peace in our time. We can't assume that that's the case, and the United States probably has to hardball them still, because that's probably why they're agreeing to such talks. It's probably worry over Trump. Worrying over Trump probably has convinced Kim Jong-un, I can't count on China to defend me anymore. Trump may be actually crazy enough to nuke me, so maybe I should at least look like I'm doing something that's peaceful, so that there's no justification. The United States can't justify attacking us because we're playing nice, essentially. Maybe China will, keep smuggling in the goods, so my people don't starve and I don't end up getting overthrown by a military general. That might be what's happening. Trump would get some credit, though. This would definitely improve his approval rating. Like in the last video, it's already ticking upwards. I think he'd gain 2 or 3 points just if the North Koreans agreed to a permanent end to the war there. It doesn't even have to hold forever. It just has to look, better than before. Better than before is certainly not any great thing anywhere else in the world, but in the sense of the Korean Peninsula, it'd be wonderful. Having the ability, for instance. Imagine North and South Koreans can more freely travel. You can see your relatives for the first time in 50 fucking years. Outside of the little peace zone. They have like this little fenced off area where they can sort of sit together and they get to talk to each other for a few hours, visiting hours. It's sort of like being in prison, being in North Korea, in the most literal sense. I find it funny that a lot of people, they dick wag and they say like, oh, North Korea is proud, their people are proud and so much more better than globalism or something. Yeah, it's just a bunch of bullshit. No, it's a police state, an extreme totalitarian regime. That's what North Korea is. There are people who ignore that because, the United States has problems. Okay, yeah, definitely. But the President of the United States is probably instrumental in why this is happening, for deeper reasons. Maybe Kim Jong-un heard, through the grapevine I heard that he might actually be serious the next time he decides to send a carrier over here. It might mean war. We would not survive such an encounter. They would, so maybe I should just, get used to the concept that I've got to... I want to be pampered, says Kim Jong-un. I don't want to have Putin send me rice and so I just want to eat caviar and drink expensive imported liquors. Apparently he really likes cognac. Or maybe that was his dad. One of the 3 Kims was really fond of cognac, apparently, and would drink it like a trooper and expensive import, like French wine and stuff. And we've got to understand, there is one thing that plays into North Korea. A lot of people in North Korea have never been outside of North Korea, other than the upper bureaucracy, the party loyal, the upper military brass. They probably visited China occasionally. Maybe they've seen Russia. Occasionally South Korea, but usually not, because they might just decide not to go home. Kim Jong-un was classically educated in Europe. So he is aware that the outside world is considerably wealthier than North Korea. He's aware that the outside world sees him as a pariah. He's aware of the fact that there are things in the outside world that a lot of North Koreans would never be able to fathom. In fact, keeping some people in the country isolated from the outside world, I think one strategy that could be employed by North Korea is just waiting long enough for the oldest generation that remembers his granddad to die off, because they just wouldn't be able to handle the fact that their entire worldview was prefaced on a lie. Whereas Kim Jong-un has opened up a little bit more to a sort of modernity, like, I guess, style there. If you look at their theater, you can watch North Korean TV broadcasts, pirated through South Korea, of course, or I believe China now. I think they changed the broadcast. If you watch like their theater performances, some of the stuff, the style of dress is very much, it appears, different between the older generation and the younger. The younger generation, they're wearing like they sort of look like 90s era, maybe Polish culture or something, honestly. A lot of track suits, just jeans and a t-shirt. Apparently that's become acceptable there. People who appear to be maybe older than 40 really don't. They wear the very traditional style of dress. There's a difference. It appears that there is a gap opening up between the younger, the Kim Jong-un era Koreans and the Kim Il-sung / Kim Jong-il era. It looks like there is a difference there. That may be causing internal havoc that we're simply not hearing about much, because there's not a lot of cultural interchange between North Korea. Can you imagine, say you have like a sister city in North Korea. It's like, oh, here's the kid, the problem child of the school has graciously volunteered, to keep himself out of juvie, to go to North Korea for a month to learn like cross-cultural stuff. Have fun in the rock quarry, Jimmy. Essentially, it'd be very funny. So there is now hope of resolving the very long-standing conflict there. Though America's longest war, too. It's not Afghanistan. It's the longest active shooting war where we're physically in another country. It's the longest invasion. It's not the longest war. The longest war is since the 1950s, actually, in Korea. Hell of a lot of Americans, the vast majority of Americans have never seen a day where we weren't at war because of Korea. That's about all. Peace out.